Howdy folks, welcome back to our orange RockerVerb 50. This is the Mark 1, and if you haven't already seen it, you can already see why the customer has brought it back. If we look at that valve right there, you can see a nice white and milky top on there where the getter used to be, and if you look at the rest of them, they're fine. You might remember this this amplifier from quite a few months ago. Came in, had a whole bunch of issues. In particular, reverb's not working, but that's okay because the person who owns this, or the person who owned it, that originally got me to repair it, sold it to someone else, and that other person who bought it used it for a little bit, and then this happened. Now, I'm going to take the valve out and have a look. Generally, that can only be caused by one thing, and that is the valve losing vacuum. In other words, a crack in the glass, or maybe one of the pins has dislodged itself, or who knows what. But the reality is that it's a matched quad, and I'm going to look at ways to make this affordable for the customer. It's a shame to have to replace all the tubes. However, what we are going to do is, I know with this particular amp, you can shut off 2 of the 4 tubes, and I think it's 1 and 4 or 2 and 3, whatever the matching pairs are. So I'm going to see if I can replace the dead tube maybe with the 1 and 4. I believe I'll look at the schematic with the 1 and 4 and get a matched pair to match that. And I'll have a look and see if that's entirely possible as well. So we're going to try to make this an affordable fix for the customer. While I'm here, I'm also just going to check the preamp tubes because I did replace those as well in the last video, and I'm just going to have a look at them and make sure they're okay. The other thing this amp is in for was a problem that was in here last time. The reverb tank is stuffed. So we're going to make sure that it is actually the reverb tank, and if it is, we'll find a replacement. If it's not, we will look elsewhere. Alrighty, so I'm just going to get to the bottom of the reverb tank because I can at least then go ahead and order one if necessary. You can see here it's in mighty fine condition. It does have rubber grommets here to help isolate it from the cabinet, although I will tell you, the cabinet that RockerVerb 50 Mark 1 is built in weighs an absolute ton. It's a monster. 2x12 combo with whopping great big transformers. The transformers are actually even bigger than my Fender Bassman. I'll show you that in a second. However, how do we fix a reverb tank? Well, how do we test it to start with? So the first thing we have to do is look up these numbers that are up here. 9AB 2 C1B. Okay, so I'm going to get out my trusty laptop, and we're going to look up that number, and we're going to find out what sort of reverb tank it is, how much it costs to replace, and what the impedance or the resistance should be on the input and output of the tank. So I'm going to get that all ready and show you guys how to do that. Bear with me. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so I've looked up the tank on my supplier's website, and they do in fact have them in stock, and it's the exact one. Before I show you what that looks like on their website, I'm going to measure the input and output side of these. Now, the input impedance is supposed to be 10 ohms according to this. Now my multimeter goes down to the 200 ohm range as the lowest one. I've put the ground clip on the inside of this, and I'm going to measure this side. So if we have a look here, we're getting 1.2 ohms. Okay, and what I'm going to do now plug in on this side, and we're going to repeat this test again from the inside of the tank. As you can see, that's not measuring anything. So let's turn the tank around and look at it from the inside. Alright, so in this instance what we're going to find is we're going to go onto the inside of the tank here and put one probe there and one probe here, and we can see we're not getting anything at all. Okay, so if we go to the other side here, this tank is full of cobwebs, so I'm going to put my probe there and put my other side of my probe there, and we're getting the 1.3 ohms. We're getting something, okay, so that's not horrible. Now, the input impedance is supposed to be 10, and that is the actual input side, so we're getting something. It's the output side down this end we're not getting anything on. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am just going to unclip, and I'm going to need both hands for this, so I'm going to put the camera down for a second and unplug this. I'm going to unplug this little Molex clip, or I forget what they're called. There is a certain name for them. I'm going to unplug that, and I'm going to see if I can get any sort of DC resistance measurement coming directly from this little inductor here, which is, you know, sort of like a transformer. Okay, so I'm just going to put the camera down and test that, and I'll show you what my results are. Alright, so I am now just going through and eliminating all the areas that could potentially be wrong. I still suspect that this is going to be to the point where I am going to just have to buy a new reverb tank. Now, can these be repaired? Yes, they can. Is it worth it sometimes? Generally, in most cases, not at all. Okay, so anyway, what I'm going to do now is put my probes onto either end of these clips, and you can see my multimeter is still not responding. Now, I've set it to the 20 kilo ohm range because the output impedance is supposed to be 2.5 kilo ohm, or actually the exact number should be 2,575 ohms. We can see I'm not getting anything there at all in that range. So I can go up to the 200 kilo ohm range, still not getting anything. So, new reverb tank. Okay, let's turn the multimeter off, and we've sorted that out. So I'm going to go ahead and order a new reverb tank, and in the meantime, let's get the chassis up onto the workbench, and let's look at what we can do about replacing that power valve. Alrighty folks, so what I did was just go through and do a little bit of a visual inspection, but also while I was at it, I just decided to take out the two output valve failure fuses just to make sure, you know, you don't want to sort of be chasing your tail around here, so it's always good to check the basics. So the next thing I'm going to do is a visual inspection. Okay, what I found was, just to mention, I took both these fuses out and I just did a continuity test on my multimeter and they came out fine. Okay, so they're all okay. I even went ahead and checked the fuse in here just in case to see if it was blown, because then it would be a pretty good indicator of what's going on. Okay, so what I am noticing here is that the fuses, so the way this is matched is 2 and 4 are matched and 1 and 3 are matched. And if we look in here, we can see that's V1, which is the one that's cracked and gone. We're going to pull that one out right now and have a bit of a visual inspection. I'm going to use both hands just in case, so I don't pull it out by well, with any extra force and haphazardly break it in my hand and have shattered glass in my fingers. So here is our lovely JJ tube. It was brand new when I put it in here quite a while ago now. We can see here current was measured at 28, the transconductance 3450, and that's the ID number, apexmatching.com. Okay, so it's a matched tube. Now, what I am going to do is it'll have to be matched with tube number 3. Okay, so let's take tube number 3 out, and I'll do this with 2 hands again, because you got to spread these clips apart and pull this out, and I don't want to hurt myself, so bear with me. Alrighty, so I got tube 3 out, and you can see it is matched. So I'm going to put that aside for a moment, and what we're going to do, I'm just going to go through my parts bin and find 2 6v6s that are matched and see if I can fit them into tube socket 1 and 3, and we'll see how we go from there. Alrighty folks, so I had a bit of a play around with this a bit more, and I'm going to shine my torch in here, my flashlight for you American fellows, not my fleshlight. I don't own one of those. I use my hand like a real man. If we look here, now, you got your wire on top and the bottom. I'm going to try to see if I can... There we go, okay. So you can see these faint little tiny wires on that little red connector. Okay, I'm gonna actually see if I can point these out. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This will work. So this wire here is still connected to this. This wire here, you can see I'm moving around. It's borking. There we go. So that's possibly... Oof, I'm very close to this here. Got myself a new phone. Tell me what you think about the quality of the image here. But you can see to scale how big we're talking. That's my thumbnail here. So you know, we're talking. This is probably as thin as a baby's hair. Now somehow I'm gonna have to attach this back to this, and then we're gonna test and see if that actually makes the problem go away by making it work. So bear with me. I will definitely need 2 hands for this. I'm going to try to see if I can attach that wire back. What I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to grab a little emery paper, and I'm just going to rub that wire, because it'll be enamel coated, and I'm going to rub that wire and see if I could just add a drop of solder and make it just contact this other terminal. And if I can, and the reverb works, then we're golden. 90% of the time, this is why reverb tanks don't work. It's because that one little wire breaks. Alrighty folks, what are we up to with the RockerVerb 50? Well, just an update. We're about to wrap things up here. What I done was replace the output tube that was blown, and I was able to get one closely matched rather than buying a whole new match set. Played around with their positions as well, and I have checked the bias, and everything seems to be okay now. So I'm just going to show you what I've done. The other thing we're waiting for was a brand new reverb tank. That's in here now, installed, ready to go. I left some of the foam in here, and the reason why, the foam that it comes with when you ship it, the reason why is because it's quite an aggressive reverb tank, and what I was finding was I was getting feedback through the cabinet and the chassis. It's already got some isolation on here. It comes with rubber grommets, and I've put in a little bit more isolation, but I'm still getting it. So I've left some of the foam in there, and that's made the reverb still operate at an extremely high level if needed, but doesn't feedback as much when you have it cranked up all the way. The other thing I'm going to do is just check, because just check the preamp tubes, and especially the reverb preamp tubes, because they're supposed to be 12AT7s, okay, for reverb. I believe that's the send and that's the receive, but I'll double check just to be certain, and I'll double check they're in the right order, because it looked like some of the stuff had been changed and there were rubber bands put on valves and all sorts of odd things. It wasn't like that the last time we played with this. The last thing I did, and I did this off camera because I needed both hands, so I couldn't show you this, but I biased the amp, replace the tube, so therefore you have to bias again. So I just biased it, and what I've ended up doing was I biased the amp a little bit colder than it should be. So obviously these are 6v6s, maximum is 12 watts plate dissipation, 70% brings it to about 8.4 watts. I've got the plate dissipation running at about 55 to 60%, which brings it down to, if memory serves me correctly, about 7.2, 7.5 watts plate dissipation. So I've got that set up like that now, and that'll guarantee the longevity of the 6v6 power tubes without really sacrificing a great deal of tone and volume. I'm going to patch this amp back up now, and I'll give it a test run to make sure that it does sound good and is happy. In the current state it's in, due to the way the chassis is and everything, and due to the weight and bulk of this amplifier, I'm just going to put it back together and then plug it in and have a quick play to make sure it's all happy, and then we will give it back to the customer. This is Jarvis, and he's being foreman and looking over my work. Everything okay, man? No fucks given. It's 1 o'clock, no wonder I'm getting hungry.